A lion doesn't roar before it strikes. The strongest man doesn't need words to inspire fear. Some rely on noise and threats, driven by loud emotions. But true power is silent, unpredictable, and controlled. That's why it's formidable. What you can't predict, you can't control. And what you can't control, you fear. In this world, the most feared man isn't the loudest. He's the one who commands the room in silence. His quiet isn't indifference, it's vigilance. Observing everything without reacting. That's the presence we'll forge today. Not through tricks or words, but through 6 inner states drawn from ancient Stoic wisdom. Each state makes your enemies question your every move. They won't know your next step. They won't grasp who you are. That uncertainty makes them fear you. Let's begin. They expect a reaction, a retreat, or an outburst of anger, but you choose silence. And in that moment, everything shifts. Most people react its instinct. When insulted, they defend. When threatened, they explain. When provoked, they explode. But that's not strength. That's handing control to others. When your enemies dictate your emotions, they've already won by stealing your peace. When you argue or defend yourself, you let them into your mind. That's exactly what they want. Imagine this. Instead, you remain unshaken. You say nothing. You don't flinch. You meet their gaze with calm, unreadable resolve. Suddenly, they're unsure of what comes next. Suddenly, they feel exposed. That's true power. It's not noise but silence that unnerves. In silence, you force your enemies to confront their own weaknesses. You hold a mirror to their chaos. They crave disorder. You offer stillness. They seek drama. You give them emptiness. And emptiness never lies. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you respond with silence, with absolute disciplined focus, you're not weak. You're proving you've already won the battle within. I knew a man, quiet, unassuming, never raising his voice. In a meeting, a colleague tried to humiliate him, calling him outdated, mocking his ideas. He didn't argue or react. He simply looked at his accuser and asked, "Are you done?" Then returned to his work. The room fell silent. The attacker shrank. That silence wasn't weakness. It was a statement. You can't shake me. You don't define me. That silence broke his opponent more than any retort could. The man who can't be rattled can't be touched. The one who needs no defense becomes a presence that commands awe. So train yourself to stay calm. Master the pause. Let the storm pass while you stand unmoved. In a world that feeds on reactions, refusing to react is your most powerful move. There's a presence that needs no permission. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't flaunt itself with volume, charisma, or theatrics. It's simply calm, grounded, unyielding. That's what makes it formidable. Most people are noise, filling the air with anxious energy. They talk too much, move too fast, try too hard. They crave attention like air, validation like water. They scramble to dominate the room, unaware that true power doesn't demand control. It claims it naturally. Without asking, there's something unsettling about a man who stands firm, never explains, never chases approval or forces a smile. He stands there, alert yet silent, present yet untouchable. In his stillness, the room shifts. People lower their voices around him. They choose words carefully. They glance his way before finishing a thought, not because he demands it, but because his quiet strength compels it. That's real power. Not the power that shouts or insists, but the kind that radiates from within, built on discipline, clarity, and restraint. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who harmed you." A man with unyielding presence doesn't just ignore his enemies, he rises so far above them, they can't reach him. That's why they fear him. I knew a man, Elias, not tall or flashy, always plainly dressed. Yet when he entered a room, people noticed not because he tried, but because he didn't need to. His slow steps, sparser words, and steady gaze made others shift uncomfortably. Every move and silence deliberate, even without speaking. His presence carried weight, as if something profound had been said. In a cutthroat industry ruled by egos, meetings were loud, with people arguing to prove their worth. Elias stayed silent, waiting until the noise burned out, then asked one piercing question, just one sharp, concise question. Suddenly, the room snapped from chaos to clarity. It wasn't just his words, but how he carried himself. No wasted motion, no unnecessary emotion. He was a reminder that, in a world of reactions, silence is a threat. They feared his quiet because it was unpredictable, a sign he was watching, calculating, choosing his moment. The most feared aren't the loudest, but those whose next move is a mystery. That's the power of an unshakable presence. It unbalances enemies, forces manipulators to tread carefully, and silences even the boldest voices. To build this, stop performing, quit chasing attention, breathe slowly, stand tall, observe more than you speak. Practice doing nothing until your silence becomes the loudest force in the room. A man anchored in purpose, clarity, and restraint never rushes. He makes the world slow down to meet him. When that happens, you don't need to claim power. You are power. There's a reason people attack you. It's not always hate. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of what you represent. Your calm, your refusal to play their emotional games. So they strike, not with fists but with words. Not to win, but to provoke. Insults aren't about truth, they're about control. They want to break your balance, test if they can make you fall. They crave power by forcing your reaction, but the moment you respond, you give them what they want, no matter how clever your comeback or justified your anger. If your peace is disrupted for even a moment, they've won. But when you stay steady, offering no explanation, not even acknowledging their barbs, their words echo louder in their own minds than in yours. Silence in the face of attack isn't weakness, it's a verdict. A calm and resolute declaration: you're not worth my response. Nothing stings more than being ignored by the one you tried to wound. I knew a woman, Clara, in a toxic workplace where gossip and subtle hostility were currency. A spiteful colleague, driven by envy, set out to undermine Clara with sly insults, backhanded compliments, whispers just loud enough to hear, sarcasm veiled as humor in meetings. But Clara never took the bait. Not once. She offered a faint smile, took notes, focused on her work, and left the room as composed as she entered. Over time, something shifted. The attacker grew louder, more vicious. desperate for a reaction. But the louder she got, the smaller she seemed, until one day, people stopped laughing, stopped listening. When you keep swinging at an unyielding wall, you start to look foolish. Clara didn't fight back or expose her foe. She stood firm, letting her adversary collapse under the weight of her own efforts. That's the Stoic lesson: let fools reveal themselves. Let insults fall into your silence. Let attackers crumble under their own insecurities. Epictetus wrote, "If someone speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself, but say, clearly, they don't know me." In other words, deny them the satisfaction of your response. Withhold your anger, your clarity. Give them silence. For the man who doesn't justify himself is either defeated or so far above the fray that the battle never reaches him. Be the latter. Let your silence speak volumes. Let your dignity be unbreakable. The next time someone insults you, smile. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because their words can't touch what matters most. People fear what they can't predict. They may not admit it, but the moment you become unreadable, you become a threat. Control begins with information. Your fears, ambitions, habits, and weaknesses are leverage for those with ill intent. The more you talk, the more you explain, the more they learn not to understand you, but to map you, to manipulate, to unsettle you. But when you stay guarded, act without warning, and offer no explanations, you become a puzzle they can't solve, a question they can't answer, a storm they can't predict. That's what terrifies them. You don't need to lie or deceive. Simply maintain a gap between who you are and what others know. The Stoics understood this. They didn't live loudly or flaunt their desires. They acted with purpose, not for fame. They shared only what was necessary, never everything. Because what's revealed can be exploited. Seneca wrote, "Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent is a great art." Sometimes, silence isn't just wisdom, it's armor. I knew a man, Caleb, soft-spoken and disciplined, never saying more than needed. When asked about his personal life, he'd smile, answer briefly, and redirect. Not cold, but deliberate. Some called him secretive, others arrogant. But over time, those same people grew to respect him. Why? Because they couldn't read him. They didn't know what angered him, what unsettled him, or what he truly wanted. That made him untouchable. No one could use his emotions against him. When pressure hit workplace drama, rumors swirling, Caleb remained unshaken. No one could find his triggers because he revealed no blueprint of his inner self. He moved like a shadow, leaving others wary of his next step. Not because of what he said, but because they didn't know what he could do. That's the strength of being unreadable. Your enemies can't break what they can't touch, and they can't touch what they don't understand. To forge this armor, stop broadcasting your every move. Keep your goals private. Don't let others map every corner of your mind. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let them assume and falter. A man who keeps something to himself isn't hiding weakness, he's holding power. The world has no weapon against the man who walks in silence, wielding his truth like a blade, revealing it only when the moment demands. Let them study you. Let them try to crack your silence. Let them exhaust themselves guessing your next move, finding no pattern but your own will. In a world obsessed with words, Action is rare and formidable. We live in an age where everyone announces their plans, their projects, their goals, their habits, their transformations. They speak of what they'll do before they've done it, mistaking attention for progress. But the more you talk, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to stop. The man who acts in silence builds without fanfare, plans without promises. He's unstoppable. By the time the world reacts, it's too late. The Stoics cared little for words. They didn't post daily affirmations or flaunt their virtues. They lived quietly, with rigor and discipline, knowing that silent action is the truest form of self-respect. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Let others preach. Let them sell dreams. Let them chase applause for ideas of success while you pursue the real thing." I knew a woman, Samira, brilliant and driven, yet so quiet she was nearly invisible. While others bragged about new projects, future promotions, or side hustles, Samira stayed silent, working diligently. At first, no one noticed her. They thought her weak, passive, forgettable, until her name came up as the one who built a system that saved her company millions. Suddenly, heads turned. But by then, she'd already moved on, promoted, relocated, elevated to a role no one saw coming, because they were too busy talking. That's the power of silent action. It shifts the balance without warning. It delivers results without explanation. It leaves your enemies stunned, not because they didn't see you coming, but because they forgot to take you seriously until it was too late. To cultivate this power, shut the door and work. Let your efforts echo in silence. Don't warn anyone. Don't proclaim your greatness. Don't overpromise. Just vanish into action and emerge with results. When you act without announcement, you sidestep resistance and spark. Fear not of what you've said you'll do, but of what you might do next. That silence, that tension, that mystery resonates louder than any words you could speak. In a world obsessed with approval, likes, applause, social conformity, most bend themselves to fit in. They laugh when they don't want to, nod when they disagree, dilute their truth to avoid conflict. But the man who refuses this, who walks as he is, becomes a threat, not because he's cruel or confrontational, but because he reminds others of what they've surrendered. Authenticity unsettles, especially those hiding behind masks. By refusing to conform, you don't just free yourself, you expose their compromises without lifting a finger. I knew a man, Jace, not loud or rebellious, yet he made people uneasy without trying. He spoke plainly, never softening his voice to please. He ignored trends, wore what he liked, said what he thought, and when others gossiped, he stayed silent, not from fear, but from principle. Some shunned him, calling him harsh or aloof, but deep down, they felt pressure not from him, but from their own inability to match his resolve. He was simply himself, unapologetic, steadfast, more powerful than any rebellion. That's the paradox of authenticity. It doesn't shout or argue. It stands quietly, forcing others to face their own facades. The Stoics believed in living true to your nature, not the world's expectations or the crowd's mood, but to virtue, integrity, and harmony, even if it sets you apart, especially then, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You don't need to persuade anyone or blend into the crowd's energy. You don't even need to be understood. Just be yourself. In a world built on performance, being authentic is terrifying. To become that force, stop apologizing for who you are. Stop dimming your edge to be palatable. Don't hide your sharpness, your drive, your clarity to make others comfortable. Say less. Mean more. Say no when it's no. Walk away when it's over. Never apologize for the standards you hold, as long as you hold them for yourself first. When you become unyielding, unchanged by attention or applause, you walk in peace and with a weight that makes the weak adjust their masks before you look their way. You don't need to shout, threaten, or beg for respect. They hesitate. They falter. They fear what you might do because you give them nothing to read, only to feel. You don't fight your enemies. You become the man whose mere presence unsettles them. No weakness, no theatrics. Just silence forged through self-mastery. The most formidable man isn't the loudest, but the one who needs no words. Don't shout. Don't explain. Don't rush to be seen. Let your silence speak. Let your boundaries resonate. Let your silence inflict the wound they never expected. By the time they grasp who you are, you're already gone quiet, focused, untouchable. If this stirs something deep within you, if you feel the pull toward that silent strength, leave a comment. I'm done explaining. I act. Subscribe not because anyone demands it, but because you're tired of living small. Welcome to the world of quiet power.